The Martian by Andy Weir. Stranded on Mars. Stranded on Mars. Mark Watney, a botanist and mechanical engineer, found himself alone on the red planet. The dust from the storm that had led his crew to leave him behind still hung in the air, casting a pallid glow over the barren landscape. "Well, this is a fine mess I found myself in," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the whir of his suit's life support systems. His stomach gave a sharp jolt, a stark reminder of his dire situation. With only 300 sols worth of food, rationing was imperative. He surveyed the scattered equipment around him, a rover damaged but functional. The Hab, a temporary home now his sanctuary. And the Maeve, silent and still, monument to his isolation. Watney's log, Sol 6. Scavenging for supplies. Skixing the rover, hacking the systems to recycle waste for water, and growing potatoes. It's going to be a busy day. He set to work, repurposing the mission's equipment with a scientist's precision and a survivor's desperation. The Hab's CO2 filters and O2 tanks were first, followed by a plan to capture CO2 from the Martian atmosphere. He envisioned a primitive distillery for his urine, and his meal packs were carefully rationed, supplemented by multivitamins. As he worked, Watney felt a connection to Mars, a bond forged by necessity and solitude. His humor remained intact, often surfacing in his wry observations and the playful naming of his makeshift inventions. "Welcome to the Watney Space Pirate Distillery," he'd joke, a light-hearted moment in the midst of his critical task of producing water. The Martian days, or sols, were marked by the relentless work of survival. On Sol 10, after a grueling 12-hour process, he successfully recharged the solar cells. The next day he ventured out in the rover, driving away from the Hab for nearly 2 hours before conducting a short EVA. He collected samples, his hands feeling the coarse, iron-rich soil through the fabric of his gloves. The silence of Mars was profound, broken only by the sound of his own breathing and the crunch of boots on regolith. Returning to the rover, he drove for another 2 hours, the landscape a monotonous expanse of reds and browns, the horizon a sharp line against the black sky. Back at the Hab, he plugged in the rover to recharge, a process that would take another 12 hours. He used this time to meticulously log his activities, the entries a mix of technical details and personal reflections. On Earth, Mindy Park, eyes heavy with exhaustion, monitored the satellite feeds. She had been following Watney's movements closely, noting each deviation from the expected patterns. Ingenuity and resourcefulness. Mark Watney awoke to the dim light of a Martian morning, the red dust casting an eerie glow inside the Hab. He stretched his limbs, feeling the stiffness that came from a night spent on an alien world. Today was no ordinary day. It was the day he would turn his dire situation into a chance for survival. "All right, Mark," he muttered to himself. "Let's get to work." Watney's ingenuity and resourcefulness were put to the test as he rigged up a homemade sling to attach a battery to Rover 2 and stacked solar cells on the rover's roof. These makeshift solutions showcased his ability to MacGyver his way out of problems using limited resources. As days turned into weeks, Watney's focus shifted towards preparing for a long trip. He took incremental steps in stocking up on supplies and conducting test drives, demonstrating his strategic thinking and meticulous planning. But survival wasn't just about staying alive, it was about getting home. Watney knew he couldn't wait for rescue. He had to act. He was considering a risky journey to reach the Ares 4 site for the chance to establish communication with NASA. This decision reflected his determination and willingness to take calculated risks in order to enhance his chances of survival. With every obstacle overcome, Watney edged closer to his ultimate goal, returning to Earth. His unwavering resilience and resourcefulness in the face of adversity were a testament to his unrelenting spirit. And other tales of Martian agriculture. His humor, a beacon in the solitude, kept the shadows at bay. Yet, beneath the jokes lay the steel of a survivor, one who would not yield to the desolation of Mars. Juani's story was far from over. It was a tale of human spirit and the relentless pursuit of life against all odds. The red planet had thrown its worst at him, but Mark Juani, the botanist, the engineer, the astronaut, would not be defeated. He would leave Mars, not as its victim, but as its conqueror. And when he did, he would bring with him not just stories of survival, but proof that even in the darkest corners of the universe, humanity's light could never be extinguished. NASA to the rescue. NASA to the rescue. The hustle and bustle of NASA's control center was palpable, with screens flashing data and engineers huddled in intense discussion. At the heart of it all stood Venkat Kapoor, his eyes fixed on the giant screen displaying Mark Juani's last known coordinates on Mars. Time is not on our side, people. Venkat Kapoor's voice cut through the chatter. Juani has limited supplies, and we need to act fast. But the pre-supplies for Ares 4 aren't ready, objected a team member. It takes 8 months to get a probe to Mars. Venkat Kapoor turned to face the team, determination etched on his face. Then we'll have to be creative. We repurpose the Ares 4 mission to send Juani what he needs, and we do it in 3 months. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the room, but Venkat Kapoor's conviction was infectious. Teddy Sanders, the director of NASA, stepped forward, his expression grave. Venkat Kapoor, we only have one booster available, and it's allocated for another mission. If we take it, we'll be delaying crucial research. Venkat Kapoor met Teddy's gaze squarely. I understand the stakes, Teddy, but this is about saving a life. Mark's life. The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. In the following days, the team worked tirelessly, coordinating with departments across NASA to repurpose resources and expedite the mission. Engineers debated over blueprints, and scientists calculated and recalculated trajectories. The control room became a hive of activity, driven by a singular goal. Bring Mark Juani home. All right, let's think outside the box. Venkat Kapoor encouraged as he paced back and forth. We need to modify the Mars descent vehicle, and we need to do it now. The JPL engineers nodded, their faces a mix of anxiety and resolve. We'll strip it down, remove everything that Juani doesn't need for the ascent, one engineer suggested. And add extra fuel tanks, another chimed in. He'll need every drop to make it to the Ares 4 site. Working round the clock, fueled by coffee and the occasional slice of cold pizza, the MDV was transformed, its once bulky frame now sleek and efficient. Meanwhile, Teddy Sanders faced the media, his voice steady as he addressed the world. We are doing everything in our power to bring our astronaut home. This mission is about more than just one man. It's about the indomitable human spirit. Back at the control center, the clock ticked down. The launch window was approaching and the tension was palpable. Venkat Kapoor stood before the team, ready to make the final call. Re-establishing communication. Mark Juani sat cross-legged on the cold red Martian soil, surrounded by the remnants of the Pathfinder. His eyes were fixed on the ancient device, a relic from a bygone era of space exploration. He had one shot at this, one chance to reach across the void and touch the world he had left behind. Okay, let's do this, Juani muttered to himself, his breath fogging up the inside of his helmet. He connected the final wire, a makeshift bridge between the Pathfinder and his rover. The screen flickered to life, and Juani's heart skipped a beat. It was now or never. Back on Earth, the team at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory huddled around their monitors, the tension palpable. Venkat Kapoor, the mission director, leaned in closer, his eyes scanning the data streaming in. "Come on, Wani," he whispered, as if his words could traverse the empty space to Mars. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a simple yet miraculous message. "Hello, Earth." Cheers erupted in the control room, a cacophony of relief and joy. They had done it. They had re-established communication with a lone astronaut millions of miles away. On Mars, Wani allowed himself a small smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stir a flicker of hope in his chest. "Houston, we have a problem," he joked into the void, his voice laced with irony. "I'm alive." Wani's fingers moved with purpose as he typed out his status report, each keystroke a testament to his survival. At NASA, the words "Mark Wani is alive" echoed through the control room, a mantra of hope against the silence of space. With the communication lines open, the work to bring Wani home began in earnest. Every second counted, and the team on Earth worked tirelessly, their efforts now fueled by the knowledge that Wani was waiting, alive and determined, on the distant red planet. International collaboration. In the bustling control room of NASA, the tension was palpable. Venkat Kapoor, the mission director, stood before a large screen displaying a map of Mars with a blinking dot that represented Mark Wani. "Time is running out," Venkat said, turning to face the team. "We need to get Mark home, and we can't do it alone." On the other end of the line, Guo Ming from CNSA offered a lifeline. "Director Venkat, we can offer you the Taiyang booster. It's equipped with advanced propulsion capable of interplanetary travel, and it's crucial for delivering your supplies to Wani swiftly." Venkat's heart raced. This was the break they needed. "And in return," he asked cautiously. "A seat for a Chinese astronaut on the next Ares mission," Guo Ming proposed. "Together we can turn this crisis into an opportunity for international cooperation." Venkat nodded slowly. "I'll need to discuss this with my superiors, but I believe we have a deal." After the call, Venkat briefed his team on the new partnership with CNSA.I. The room buzzed with excitement at the news of the collaboration. Before the team could settle, Teddy Sanders, the director of NASA, entered the room, having been informed of the development. "Venkat, what's this I hear about CNSA?" he inquired. "We've got an offer from CNSA, sir. They're willing to help us rescue Mark Wani in exchange for a seat on the next Ares mission," Venkat continued, his voice a mixture of hope and determination. Teddy's gaze lingered on the map of Mars, the weight of the decision clear in his eyes. "I'll need to discuss this with the president, but I think we can make it work," he finally said, a sense of resolve in his tone. As the days went by, the collaboration between NASA and CNSA took shape. Engineers from both agencies worked tirelessly to modify the Taiyang booster, ensuring it could carry the necessary supplies to Mars. The modifications included a specialized payload bay designed to house the life-sustaining resources Wani would need. Back in China, Guo Ming navigated the political landscape with finesse, securing the necessary approvals for the mission. Despite resistance from some quarters, his unwavering commitment to the project paved the way for this unprecedented partnership. The launch day of the Taiyang booster arrived, a testament to the power of international collaboration. As it ascended into the heavens, it carried more than just supplies. It carried the collective hopes of two nations. Standing together at the launch site, Venkat and Guo Ming watched the booster pierce the sky. This is more than a perilous journey. Mark's heart raced as the rover's computer signaled a power system failure. The solar panels, choked by the relentless dust, were failing to charge the batteries efficiently. Time was slipping away, and with a deep breath, he set to work, his hands deftly moving over the components, coaxing life back into the rover's heart. In the quiet of the Martian night, Mark's resolve hardened. He wasn't just a man stranded. He was a symbol of humanity's relentless pursuit of survival against the odds. His thoughts briefly turned to his distant companions, the crew of the Hermes, who were now facing their own ordeal. Far above the red planet within the confines of the Hermes, a somber mood had settled. Commander Lewis stood before her crew, her voice steady yet tinged with urgency. "We have a decision to make," she began, locking eyes with each of her crewmates. "It's not just about protocols or orders. It's about what we stand for. Mark is out there, alone, fighting every second. We have the means to attempt a rescue, but it comes with great risk." The crew gathered, their faces a tapestry of concern and determination. Martinez broke the silence. "We've been through hell and back together. Leaving one of our own behind, it's not an option." Lewis nodded, acknowledging the weight of his words. "But we must also consider the mission we've been tasked with," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "The supplies we have are accounted for, and deviating from our course could mean we all face consequences beyond our own survival." The crew's eyes met in silent agreement, each one grappling with the gravity of the situation. Johansson, the youngest among them, spoke up, her voice a mixture of fear and resolve. "The data doesn't lie. The maneuver is risky, and we might not make it. But Mark, he wouldn't hesitate to do the same for any of us." The discussion went on, with each member voicing their thoughts on the moral implications of leaving a man behind, versus the oath they took as astronauts. They considered the technical challenges, the slim chances of success, and the personal cost of such a decision. In the end, it was their bond, forged through months of shared experiences in the void of space, that tipped the scales. "We do it for Mark," Beck declared, his decision echoing the sentiment of the entire crew. "We do it because it's the human thing to do." With that, the crew of the Hermes began the meticulous planning of a rescue mission that defied orders, but defined their humanity. Back on Mars, Mark, oblivious to the heated debates and the decision that had been made light. Race against time. Mark Watney, braving the harsh Martian terrain, made his way to the MAV. With the red dust of Mars painting the horizon, he focused on the path ahead, aware of the stakes. The rover, carrying the last of his supplies, was his beacon of hope in this desolate landscape. Watney's thoughts were on the mission, the critical steps he needed to take, and the crew on Hermes, who were undoubtedly watching his every move. As he approached the MAV, he could see its stripped-down form, a testament to the ingenuity and sacrifices made for this moment. Climbing out of the rover, he felt the weight of the task at hand. Preparing the MAV for launch required his full attention and precision. Inside the cockpit, he initiated the launch sequence, his mind on the crew awaiting him in orbit. The MAV's engines ignited, and he was thrust upwards, leaving the Martian surface behind, heading towards the rendezvous that would bring him home. The homecoming. Mark Watney sat in the MAV, his spacesuit hugging him tightly, the hum of the machinery filling the silence. The control panel before him was a constellation of blinking lights and switches, a stark contrast to the vast emptiness outside the small window. Mars, a red desert he'd called home for far too long, stretched out to the horizon. "Ready, Mark?" Commander Lewis's voice crackled through the comms. Watney's heart raced, but his voice was steady. "Ready as I'll ever be." The countdown began. With each passing second, Watney felt the weight of what was to come. The MAV shuddered, and he was thrust back into his seat as it launched from the Martian surface. The G-forces pressed down on him, a visceral reminder of the physical toll this journey would take. As the MAV ascended, Watney's mind raced with thoughts of Earth. Green fields, blue skies. The people he'd left behind. But there was no time for daydreams. The mission was all that mattered now. Aboard the Hermes, the crew was in motion. Beck floated through the cabin, his eyes fixed on the screens displaying Watney's ascent. "We've got a good burn," Johansson reported, her fingers flying over the controls. Commander Lewis kept her eyes on the trajectory data, calculating the precise moment for the intercept. "Mark, you're on course," Lewis continued, her voice a beacon of calm amidst the chaos. "Beck, prepare for the rendezvous." Watney nodded, his heart pounding. He could feel the spacecraft trembling around him as it fought against Mars's gravity. The MAV was stripped down, a shell of a ship meant to carry him through the void to his waiting crew. As the MAV reached the edge of the atmosphere, the shaking intensified. Watney held his breath, counting the seconds until he escaped Mars's grasp. With a final, gut-wrenching jolt, he was in space, the red planet falling away below him. Aboard the Hermes, Beck readied himself at the airlock. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered in his chest. He knew the critical role he played in this rescue mission. "We're almost there, Mark. Hold on," Beck said, his voice reaching Watney through the radio. The Mavy's engines cut out, leaving Watney adrift. The silence was deafening after the roar of the launch. He watched as the Hermes grew larger in his field of view, a shining beacon of hope in the endless blackness. Back on the Hermes, Johansson's eyes flicked across the monitors, ensuring that all systems were functioning optimally for the delicate rendezvous maneuver. Vogel stood by, ready to seal the outer valve door of the airlock if needed. As the two spacecraft drew closer, the tension among the crew escalated. They knew that any mistake or malfunction could result in disaster. Lewis remained focused, her years of experience guiding her through the intricate calculations necessary for a successful intercept. Watney, alone in the tiny Maeve, felt the weight of his isolation. The silence pressed down on him, broken only by the occasional static-filled transmission from the Hermes. He trusted his crew, but the knowledge that they were his only hope of survival added a heavy burden to his already tense shoulders. Finally, the moment of truth arrived. The Hermes loomed large before Watney, its airlock door open like a welcoming embrace. Beck, poised at the threshold, reached out into the void, his gloved hand extending towards Watney. With a final burst of maneuvering thrusters, the MAV slid into place, and Watney's outstretched hand found Beck's. They pulled, and Watney tumbled into the airlock, his heart overflowing with relief. The crew of the Hermes cheered, their voices a symphony of triumph and relief. They had done it. Against all odds, they had brought their comrade home. As the airlock sealed and the pressure equalized, Watney removed his helmet, his eyes meeting Beck's. "Good to be back," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Beck smiled, the tension draining from his shoulders. "Welcome home, Mark. We've got you now."